Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Conscious Living 101 podcast. My name is Cheryl, and this is my sister Christine. Welcome back. Today, we're actually going to be talking about conscious living. Lo and behold, that's what our podcast is named. So we should probably explain what conscious living means.
I think that's a good idea.
So we're going to talk today about what is conscious living and how that plays into your everyday life once you start living consciously. So for us, conscious living is you're stopping and you're thinking before you react to anything.
Yeah, it's not blind reaction.
Yeah. So basically, you get to a point where you are going within yourself and you're kind of observing your reactions to a point where you can now start controlling them. Whereas most people live blindly and just react blindly, right? Like if you're reacting in anger or, you're sad, people don't really go within and ask themselves why.
Yeah.
But when you are living consciously, that's exactly what you're going to do is you are going to start looking at every moment of your life and asking yourself, why is this happening?
Right. Why am I doing this? Why am I thinking this? Why are other people doing things?
Yeah, well, don't worry about other people. But so some of the things that's going to happen when you become a conscious thinker and living consciously is that you're actually going to become a self-responsible person. And what that means is you are now taking responsibility for yourself, for your actions, for your thoughts, for your behaviors, and you're not going to be, blaming other people for what's going on in your life.
I can't blame the bad driver in front of me.
Definitely not.
Okay.
Not when you start living consciously. So
can I blame my boyfriend?
No. So if you want to be on the path to living consciously, then you got to be prepared to stop blaming anybody for anything.
Well, and that's actually a very empowering thing to do when you become self-responsible, because what you're saying is that there is nothing outside of you that can affect you, has control over you. Nothing controls your happiness, nothing controls your emotions. You control that. And sometimes I think it's difficult. I think sometimes people think, oh no, I can't control my emotions. Like, they come up so quickly, or the anger or the sadness or whatever. I can't really control them.
It takes practice.
And it's not specifically about controlling them. It's about witnessing them and understanding that they don't control you.
Right.
So I think maybe it's not about controlling. It's more about just witnessing and understanding that you're not your anger, you're not your sadness. You're something beyond that.
Right. Yeah. So you're basically just stopping in that moment, right? Say you are mad at that driver, right? You're stopping in that moment, and instead of projecting that anger onto that driver, you're stopping, going within yourself and saying,
where did anger come from?
Why is this irritating me?
Yeah.
Right. And like, I know it's hard to think that there's an answer in there, but there's layers upon layers. As you dig deep and you start becoming conscious and going within yourself, you start understanding where that anger truly comes from and isn't from the other person, right?
No.
So living consciously is just that. Like, you really are learning about yourself, and then, taking that self-responsibility and then understanding that it's really not about anybody else in your life. And it actually becomes a more peaceful way to live, because you almost understand that you do have control of your life, and it's not the other person and what the other person is doing, right?
Yeah.
So living consciously does start to, okay, it's tormenting too, because you can't really place blame onto anybody else, right? But you do.
No, you have to own it. You have to own your emotions, and your feelings and your thoughts and your beliefs, and whatever those beliefs might be. Say you feel unworthy. A lot of times, I know over our history and our relationships, we'd have this deep sense of unworthiness, and then all of a sudden you're projecting it onto your partner, and you're like, well, you're making me feel unworthy, or because you did this, now I feel unworthy. But the reality was that unworthiness was already there long before that person showed up.
Right.
And so it's just about paying attention to when those feelings do come up, say a sense of unworthiness, well, where did they come from? You know, if you're going to live consciously, that you need to become self-responsible, and you know that they did not come from your partner or the person who's a crappy driver in front of you or cut you off. That anger was already there. That unworthiness was already there. Well, where did it come from? Why is it there? And that's what we mean by you going within.
Yeah.
We talk about that in our first podcast, if you haven't listened to it, but just living consciously really is about going within yourself and paying attention, stopping thinking, not having those blind reactions. And
because we go through our day unconscious.
Most people do.
Everybody does.
They really do. And if you think about it yourself, if you just thought about a few things during the day, you probably would recall that you probably just went through them in complete blind unconsciousness, or that where you had some blind reactions
right.
to things.
So when you're living consciously, so then what you're doing is you're going inside, and then you start looking at the beliefs that you've had and the patterns that you've created, from a very young child, that you're carrying over and creating your experiences with.
And how those thoughts are affecting your reality now, because they are. Right. And it's hard to correlate what happened a long time ago or past hurts, to what's happening right now. But it does happen, and it affects your happiness. Like, if you're not aware that you're unconsciously going through your day with a lack of worth, or a lack of value, where you perceive yourself in some negative, harmful way,
you're disrespected,
but you may not even know that you have those beliefs deep within yourself
until you go in it.
But if you have them, they're affecting your reality, they're affecting your happiness, and living consciously is what helps you stop that, so that you can actually move into living a genuinely peaceful, abundant loving life. It's
because you can change. Like, you can't change something unless you know it's there. So right. If you're living blind, it's very difficult too. If you're living blindly, how are you ever going to change your ways, right? So living consciously helps you to start understanding, so that you can make changes in your life in a positive way.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what's going to happen, is you're going to start digging into your beliefs and the patterns and
where they come from.
It's not always fun.
How are they affecting
you guys?
me?
It's not fun, but
it's not fun to realize that somewhere within yourself you don't like yourself, or you have a lot of self-doubts or guilt, or that there's some kind of beliefs within you that don't feel good. Like, who the heck wants to believe that they don't like themselves? But a lot of people don't. And again, it might not even be a conscious thing, but that is what conscious living is about. You start to pull up these beliefs that might be affecting your life negatively, that might be having an effect on your relationships, or your your job, or your relationships with your children, like parenting. So many people parent in such an unconscious way, and I have a son, and have tried very hard to parent him more consciously. And really what that means for me is like parenting where I see my stuff before I'm projecting it onto my son. I see if I'm upset about something, or if something's triggered me, that I stop, I pay attention, and instead of just blindly like reacting and getting angry, or saying something that's probably going to be harmful or hurtful, I just stop and really pay attention to what's going on within myself before I'm projecting it onto him. And that's the same for all my other relationships. I really sit and pay attention to what's happening within myself. And I was not always like that. I know you were not either. I know that, when I was always like that. When we were younger, oh man, like the drama. I'm sure a lot of you are going to relate to this, like the drama that just exists in relationships in your life.
Because you're blaming the other person for everything.
Yeah. And honestly, the blame game, we always say, you play the blame game, you will never, ever win. No. And let's face it. Some people are jerks. Like, okay, we're going to call it that some people are jerks. But the thing is, if you focus on that and you're focusing on other people's behavior, it's probably the main way to stop conscious living.
Yeah. If you're focusing on
worrying about what other people are doing. It doesn't matter what other people are doing. In fact, if everybody took responsibility for themselves, the way they felt, the way they, came across to other people, I think the world would be a lot better place. And I'm I say a lot to, to people that I talk to about consciousness and spiritual awakening. And I tell them, if everybody took responsibility for their inner self, you would find the inner peace within yourself. And if everybody did that, like the world would start to look kind of like a little bit like heaven on earth. Like
there might not be any fighting about vaccines or masks.
No,
or
what? No, I'm like,
can you imagine?
No, wow. No. And we try to stay far away from those
engaging in that kind of stuff. And that's another thing, you guys, like that's still projecting outside yourself when you're getting involved in those kind of games,
or when you're getting worked up about it. I mean, you have to make a decision about those kind of things, about vaccines, but you also have to honor what other people are deciding as well, and not just with things like vaccines and
masks,
but like what people are choosing to eat. And
you don't need to be around it if you don't like it. But
you don't. And
like you want to be honored for the choices you make, right? So you should be honoring other people. But anyway, and that comes with conscious living, because you do understand that we all create our own reality, right? Like once you become conscious and are living like that, you understand that they are too living consciously, or should be living consciously, right? Or could be living consciously.
I mean, there is no should or should not. It's a choice. It's a personal choice. But for me, I would rather choose to live consciously, because that's where my inner peace has come from. That's where my happiness has come from. That's where my anxiety has just melted away, without.
That is kind of like what happens is when you start living consciously, you kind of slow down. Like
kind of.
You
definitely slow down.
Your thoughts slow down.
They do.
And then everything around you kind of slows down, because you're not always fighting. Like you're not fighting yourself. You're not fighting the people around you. And so your life really slows down. And it's good, because in that slowness is where you can start learning about yourself, right?
Well, and I think part of living consciously is getting to the point of understanding that every battle you have is really a battle within yourself. And it's hard to hear that, and it's complicated, and we will talk about, as we move along in our podcast, we will go further in depth about what those kind of comments mean, creating your reality and becoming responsible for yourself, and stuff like that, and some hard topics, like what do certain things mean, like when we say like you don't project onto other people, or you're only battling yourself, and some of them are hard to
wrap your head around.
Yeah, hard to wrap your head around, or hard to swallow, because you're like, oh, I just want to be angry at that other person, but it's just such a wasted opportunity to know your true self if you're always projecting your emotions onto someone else. And in reality, what you're doing when you do that is you're chucking your emotions onto someone else and saying, here, you do something with them. You're responsible for them. But what the hell is, your partner supposed to do about your emotions? Or
really, you do stop blaming other people, and you do slow down, and you go inside yourself, and you start picking away at your own stuff to learn more about who you are.
We still get mad though. Like,
of course,
we're not like,
no, we're not
Buddha peaceful beings. Like, no, I mean,
we still get triggered. However, you can get triggered, but then the more you practice being conscious, the less you react quickly. Like we only get triggered for short periods.
It's very
now,
short periods of time. And it used to be what,
weeks, maybe months. Like
or years.
Carry on.
It can be
like
years.
Heartbreak.
Like think about families. Where siblings or a parent-child fight, and they literally have a fallout. Family fallout, and they don't talk for years and years and years, and it's just
because they're not living consciously.
No, it's just a projection of their own issues, and people in the same families tend to have very similar issues. And so if there's an unworthiness, a sense of unworthiness that kind of filtrates through the family, it's like you're constantly having this mirror of unworthiness thrown in your face, and it's like slapping you over and over and over. So people get so upset, and they find it so difficult to deal with that they just turn away and literally have no contact with those people. Little do they know, and they will find it out, and you might relate to this, is that down the road you're going to find somebody else to just mirror the exact same thing to you. It might not be your sibling or your parent.
You can't outrun it.
You can't outrun yourself. You can't outrun what's within you. Yeah. Like it's
going
impossible.
Nowhere
until
you look at it.
I've tried.
Yeah,
I'm sure you've tried.
You can try and shove it down there.
Yeah, we've tried, and it just will pack its bags and follow
Follow you
wherever you go. And, you know, maybe when you initially leave, you're like, oh, everything feels so much better. It was all the other person's fault. And then, you know, a few months down the road, you're like, shoot, why is that? Why do I feel shitty again? Why am I depressed again? Why am I anxious again?
But the good news is with conscious living, you can stop that pattern. You can stop
when
all
you become conscious
the hurt
of it.
and so, I mean, I think so let's talk a little bit about what you can do to become more of a conscious person and living consciously, right? So I think the first thing that people should be doing is slowing down, like slowing down your thoughts. So one good thing to do is meditation, right? So there's lots of different types of meditation. Personally, I'm not one to sit quietly and meditate.
Neither.
Like,
No.
I've never really been that way, but
not formal meditation, but I think we sit quietly. Most of our day is almost
true.
a waking meditation if you think
that's
about
true.
it, hey, because I don't think, no, I'm going to back up, because when we first started our spiritual awakening, I would say, remember when we lived on Agincourt?
Yeah.
I would sit and meditate for hours because I felt so anxious and depressed. The
I
only
did it
time
with music though.
Yeah, the only time I ever felt good was if I was sitting still, and maybe I wasn't listening to like meditation instructions or anything like that, but I would literally just sit quietly and still for hours at a time. And it might have taken me literally 2 hours to get to the stillness. And you know,
It might take a while at first.
Yeah, for most of those 2 hours, I was sitting in sheer anxiety, but I knew that if I sat long enough and just sat still enough, that eventually I would hit the peace. And I always had a sense, even early on when we started meditating, that peace was within me.
Yeah.
And so that's why I sat and I just waited for it, or I gave the intention to connect with it, or to connect with a part of me that was peaceful. And a lot of that experience meant going through the parts of me that weren't peaceful, you know, the anxiety or the depression or the unworthiness or whatever. And
but
so
you definitely need to get to a quiet space to do any of this.
2 hours to get through all those layers.
Yeah.
Still I hit stillness.
But if you can't meditate, then go out in nature.
Yeah.
Go for a walk, you know. Like I said, like I listen to
read a book, take
like
a bath, have a cup of
relaxing
tea,
music. Yeah, like there's
anything.
There's lots of different things you can do to get into a quiet space, and that quiet space will help you to just go in and be in a spot to analyze your thoughts and behaviors.
How many people do you know that go and never,
oh my God,
ever sit still until from the time they get up till the time they go to bed?
Yeah, my life is boring compared to those
I know
people.
our life is boring, but like
people perceive it as boring, but it really is not.
It's more full than that other way of living.
Yeah, because we can sit quietly by ourselves and have the best time because we're in our own peacefulness and the love and the space within ourselves.
There's a fullness to that peacefulness.
Very full.
There's not a chaoticness which is involved when you're really trying to outrun your stuff. Like that's what people are doing when they're living those crazy hectic lifestyles.
Yeah.
They don't want to they don't want to sit still.
Yeah.
They don't want to feel how crappy they feel. They don't want to feel that, you know, they don't like themselves, or that, you know, they might not be happy in their marriage, or that they hate their job. They would rather try and be so chaotic that the chaos, the overarching chaos of their life is what they're tapping into, and not the real issue that if they did sit still, that they'd have to go through. And sometimes sitting still means getting to an understanding where I need to change my job, or I might need to leave my relationships. And that's hard. And you should never do anything you're not ready for. But eventually, especially if you've had a spiritual awakening, you will get pushed and pushed and pushed until you listen to yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're choosing spiritual awakening, you've made a choice to learn who you are, to learn the truth about who you are, and you're going to be pushed until you listen. And we always say, you know, the volume will be like turned down low in the beginning, and you know, you might have like there's fluff on me here. You might have a few experiences, you know, that are just whispering to you, hey, wake up, listen to the truth, go within, and then eventually they literally start screaming, so you can't ignore it, like an accident, like my sister talks about in the first podcast. You know, I've had a couple car accidents, very eye-opening. I missed a couple years of work from one of them, and I was forced to sit still for those 2 years, and the same with her injury. So accidents.
So you're gonna create experiences so that you learn about yourself.
Yes, and maybe just listen to
Take the
ones,
easy route.
Yeah,
slow down now. Just meditate.
Yeah,
nobody needs an accident,
no,
you guys.
Nobody.
Just
meditate. No, nobody needs that. And we laugh because it is kind of amusing, but we're laughing because most people don't listen.
No,
most people don't listen.
No, not until they have to.
Not until they absolutely have to.
So
like they get hit by a truck.
Don't do that. Yeah. I mean, we didn't listen either, but don't do that. Don't learn from our mistakes.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't break your ankle and get a neck injury.
No. But I mean, stuff will happen, but if once you start to live more consciously, you'll start to see every experience, whether it's an accident or a breakup or you lose your job, an illness, you start to see it as a part of you is creating those experiences so that you can learn the truth and you can live consciously. And it's very challenging to see and look at things that way. But I would say it took us quite a few decades to get to that point, but we really do see life. We have like this overarching lens of spirituality and consciousness, to the way we see things. And, I would say included in that is, how we take self-responsibility and, everything is about everything that happens, that's triggered within us is about us. We don't,
not about anybody else.
No, we don't.
And same with you. Everything that happens to you is about you, absolutely about you and nobody else.
Yeah.
Ever.
And it's a waste of time to think that it's not and to try and push that responsibility onto someone else. But I mean, in reality,
how do you live consciously, like on a daily basis? Like, let's tell these people what it looks like, in everyday life to live consciously.
Yeah.
Give us an example of how you do that every day, or in a day, or an experience that you've had. Do you have?
I would say, because you and I have done this for so long, a lot of our day is like a waking meditation. Like, it's just really paying attention to how I'm feeling. Like if I'm not feeling well, or like almost paying attention to the anxiety when it's turned on low instead of waiting till it gets to, 10 highest decibels, like to the maximum. I'll listen to it, at 1 or 2. And I think now that we spent so much time going within ourselves and finding that stillness within ourselves, that it is a lot easier to pay attention to when the anxiety or the anger or the sadness or whatever is at like a 1 or a 2. And so in those moments, say I have something to do and, maybe I have plans to go out or whatever, maybe I'll cancel them. Like maybe I know that if I go out that, I may potentially end up projecting or, so you and I do that, like in our walks and stuff. We walk every day together, but sometimes we're like, we can't walk today. Like we need a break to go within ourselves, like so that we're not,
because you're in tune with yourself, because you're living consciously and you're taking responsibility for your own thoughts and creations, and you're recognizing that that part of you, is being triggered that day. So you need to maybe take a little break, right?
Yeah. Sometimes that's hard though when you think other people are counting on you. Like, well, I've made plans with someone. I need to go. I can't say no to things. We say no a lot more. Remember, we never used to say no to things. We'd always go to places, even though we didn't want to, or parties, or and now it's like, well, I know if I go, I'm not going to enjoy it, or like you already are self-aware enough to know what you should and shouldn't be doing.
So conscious living is, you're saying that you use consciousness to make choices in your life.
I do.
That makes it easier for you and for others.
For sure. Like it prevents other people from having to deal with me if I'm not in a
Thank
good
you.
space.
I do appreciate that.
I know. But I mean, conscious living doesn't mean like that you're Buddha and you're living, this completely peaceful life all the time. It just means that you've connected in deeply enough with yourself so that you are aware what your issues are. You're aware that, okay, I'm not going to be projecting those issues onto somebody else. You're aware when you're triggered. You're aware when you need to do something about it. And you also know, like conscious living, you also know that all those things that you might perceive as negative are not who you are. And that underneath all that stuff is the truth of who you are. And living consciously helps you almost filter through all that negative stuff. I mean, I don't want to say negative and positive really. I don't.
Yeah.
But I mean, it just helps you filter through all those illusions really about who you're not, so that you can rest peacefully in who you are. And once you connect in with who you really are, you really do get to a place of resting peacefully, because you're in a state of true beingness. Like you're in, how would you explain that? Oh, I put her on the spot.
Yeah, don't put me on the spot like that.
But what, no, like say if you're meditating, like I know we talk about sometimes about like connecting with your soul or connecting with that higher piece of yourself. Like, what does that mean when you connect there? Like, what does it feel like? To me, it feels like this space of beingness that I've always been.
Well, for me, it's a quiet space. And like, I just feel when I'm in that space, I can trust it. Like it's but I mean, you can't really get to it unless you're quiet. But like for me, like I'm going to give some practical examples of consciousness in the daily life, right? So like for me, again, okay, so you guys, you got to think like consciousness is taking responsibility for your own thoughts and actions and stopping and thinking before you do anything, right? So that's it in a nutshell. But like think about that, really apply that to every single action in your day. Like you need to live consciously moment by moment. So like say for me, say there's somebody at work and they're irritating me, right? So instead of me just thinking, what a bitch, right? Which most people would. And then, gossiping about that person or, calling my friend and like complaining about them and like, blaming them for the way that they are. Instead of doing that, you guys, you stop and you go within yourself and you say, what is irritating me right now? And it's not the other person, you guys. It's not.
I was going to say that. So I'm wrong. No.
It's not the other person,
fail.
Right? So it's like every single moment of my day, I turn it back to me. Every second, like somebody cuts me off in traffic, I turn it back to me. Why am I mad? I'm waiting in line and the person in front of me is taking too long and I'm getting impatient. I don't make it about them. No. I make everything about myself. And by doing that, then you go within your brain and within your heart and within your emotions. And, we'll talk more about how you can do that. Like, obviously, we're not getting into that now, but we will talk how you can do that because there are methods to be able to do that. But you do start picking away at that stuff and then you start learning about yourself, and that's how you free yourself and you have that peace within yourself.
Yeah.
So it is a moment to moment thing, and it takes practice, but once you start doing that where you are stopping, you're making sure that every single manifestation in your life is about you and not anybody else, and then you go from there.
Yeah. And we will give you some tools, and we're almost done this podcast, but I will say that there was one very crucial tool that we used called mirroring. And we've used that for decades now. And it's
we'll maybe talk about that in another
podcast.
Podcast.
We'll talk about it in our next podcast. But there's a lot of different tools that you can use to learn to live consciously, to learn to slow down, to learn to pay attention, to stop projecting, to become self-responsible.
Yeah. But once you start, you guys, you can't stop, and it is it's a lifetime of living consciously.
You can try and stop.
You're not really going to be able to go back.
But the volume just keeps getting turned up. Once you give the intention for spiritual awakening and to live consciously, and it's almost like once the blinders come off, you can't put them back on. No,
unfortunately. I think
we
tried. Did we try?
I'm going to say we probably tried.
It didn't work. It didn't.
No, but once they come off,
But it's worth it. It's conscious living is worth it. All of this is worth it. I know we've said that, and we'll say it a million times because we're so much happier and far more peaceful. We're different people. Different people than who we were
than 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah. And we wouldn't change a thing. So, good luck, you guys, with your conscious living. I mean, it's such a wonderful journey and experience, and we're here to help you. If you want to listen to what we have to say, it might help you. So
thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for being here, and I hope you join us again for Conscious Living 101 with Christine and Cheryl Lyric.
Yeah, take care, go within.
Yeah, take care, go within, you guys. Okay, bye.